My parents demanded I cancel my wedding for my sister's engagement, but the truth about her cheating changed everything. I, a 28-year-old lady, have been engaged to my fiancé, Jake, 30, for roughly 8 months. Our October wedding was scheduled, and all was going according to plan until last week when my parents shocked us. For background, Mia, my 25-year-old younger sister, has always been the golden child in our family. She has been seeing Tom, her 26-year-old lover, for around 2 years. In practically every sphere of our existence, my parents have always showered Mia with royal care. Though I hate to sound negative, I have always felt as though her successes dominated mine. Back in high school, Mia was a cheerleader while I was a straight-A student playing on the volleyball team. Her achievements always seemed to eclipse mine. Not to get me wrong, cheerleading merits just as much respect as any other sport, but would it have killed my parents to exhibit the same fervor for my events? I grew used to my absent parents and learned to expect almost nothing from them. I thus cut myself off from Mia, though deep down I knew it wasn't her responsibility. My immature self blamed Mia for everything. My viewpoint altered only in college when I met Jake, the love of my life. He let me see that I deserved just as much attention as everyone else and was deserving of affection. Jake showed me that every one of us is unique in our own right, and that if someone should not value my accomplishments, well, that is their loss. I also realized that it was unfair to hold Mia totally responsible when our parents were clearly in charge. I thus resolved to try to rebuild whatever sisterly relationship we still had. I started letting her know she could talk to me about anything and began checking up on her more often. She first hesitated, naturally, but she soon grew more at ease sharing with me. We discussed practically anything, regardless of its silliness or gravity. Though our tastes and paths of life were different, I was glad our connection was gradually getting better. We seemed to be, at last, the sisters we ought to have been all along. Mia knew first when Jake proposed, telling me she couldn't wait to help arrange my wedding. She was as eager as I was. Everything seemed ideal at that point. I was therefore really taken aback when my mother called last Wednesday. The call began innocuously enough. Mom inquired about wedding preparations, which was odd given her previous lack of enthusiasm. I ought to have seen something was wrong. After a few minutes of small talk, she finally got right to the point. Mia and Tom were getting engaged. As soon as those words emerged from her mouth, I started to be delighted for my sister. What could be better than this? Then I noticed Mom had stated they were planning to get engaged, which threw me off. When I asked her what she meant by that, Mom said Mia had told her Tom had been hinting at proposing. He had done all the other usual things, asked about her ring size, advised her to get a new outfit, and told her to keep a specific date free. Although these were rather clear indicators, Mia always had a tendency of romanticizing everything and exaggerating events to make them appear more than they really were. I wanted Mia not to have her expectations skyrocketing, only to be let down. When I asked Mom whether she was absolutely convinced Tom was proposing, she answered boldly. That would have marked the end of the call, but another surprise was approaching, one I would not be pleased about. My mother asked me to call off our wedding since Tom and Mia were apparently engaged. I let out a gasp. Though I must have misinterpreted, I asked her to clarify. No, she was dead serious. She wanted me to call off the wedding I had been planning for 10 months. Jake had proposed, and we had waited this long since we wanted the wedding of our dreams and refused to compromise on anything. Deposits for the caterers and other suppliers had already been laid down, not to mention the inconvenience of rearranging things. Moving everything back a year would entail losing a large sum of money. What had descended upon Mom and Dad was unknown to me. When we were short on money, they had volunteered to cover the venue. I assumed this was because they were at last interested in my life. Looking back, it seemed like they did it to challenge Jake's parents, but I was too delighted at the time to pay attention to their hidden agendas. Wait though, this was not even the worst of things. You haven't heard the rationale behind my planned delay of my wedding for Mia's expected engagement. Mom clarified that Mia wanted to be the center of attention for a full year, complete with announcements on social media and engagement pictures. I could not understand it all. Who loses money over something as flimsy as social media and calls their sister off from her wedding? Promising not to post anything about my wedding online, I tried to argue with Mom, but she claimed they would withdraw all the money they had promised for the wedding should I refuse to postpone it. Their lovely daughter was an attention seeker. Hence, At this time, they were virtually blackmailing me. This was ludicrous and unfair, I told my mother. We debated for some time, her arguing that I was being thoughtless of Mia's sentiments and selfish. What about my feelings? I asked repeatedly. Still, I received no meaningful response. She responded simply that they wouldn't pay for the venue should I proceed with the wedding. I got furious. All my life, I gave things up for Mia's sake. Now, when I was at last ready to experience the day of my dreams, that too was being robbed from me. Out of pure annoyance and rage, I did something I never would have done otherwise. I contacted Mia's fiancé, Tom, to let him know something about Mia he didn't know. The four of us, Jake and I, Mia and Tom, went on a double date some years ago when everything was good, one of those few times when we all had time to hang around together. I recall being quite content. We laughed, told stories, and for once, everything seemed ideal. Throughout the evening, Mia and I excused ourselves to the bathroom to freshen up. As we corrected our makeup, Mia handed me her phone to hold so she could wash her hands. A text message suddenly sprang up on the screen. It came from someone called Mike, wondering whether they might get back together. Though I heard Mia had dated someone some years ago, my heart still missed a beat. I felt he was no more relevant. Not sure I could resist, I asked, "Who's Mike? And why is he asking to meet again?" Mia started to spin right away. She dismissed it, believing it was nothing, just some old acquaintance extending outreach. Still, I could see her eyes ablaze with dread. I questioned once more whether something was developing between her and Mike. She said she had been texting back and forth, but she insisted it was not major. When I inquired whether Tom knew about this, she shrugged her eyes and replied lightly, "Tom didn't need to know. It's nothing." Tom seemed to be a nice man, totally loving Mia. Though I couldn't get rid of the uncomfortable sensation, I let it pass since Mia later on told me she was no longer corresponding with her ex. Right then, as Mia was trying to rob me of my bliss, my thoughts went crazy. When I phoned Tom, I laid it all out, roughly following the text I had seen that day. And should that not be sufficient, I advised him to monitor his girlfriend. Looking back, I realized this was sort of improper, not the sort of truth I should have been imparting to Tom, of course, but the way I did it. But already, it was too late. I spoke with Tom 2 days ago, and then Mom called. Let's just say I was glad I wasn't in front of her. She was yelling like a crazed person, as though a tragedy had hit. Her comments really impacted me, as I felt I had made a major error. Tom apparently told Mia they needed to talk when phoning her. Mia got all ready, believing she was about to be engaged, but when she at last arrived at the location, Tom was quite irate. He inquired whether that was accurate and reiterated what I had said. Mia first denied it, but she grew angry when Tom wanted to see her phone, telling him he should believe her. At last, Tom split from Mia. Mom and Dad never seemed likely to pardon me for this. Mom yelled at me, and I could hear Mia berating me in the backdrop. I kept apologizing, saying I only did this because they insisted I call off my wedding. I told them I had worked very hard on it. Dad's ruling then was that he was taking back the money they had set aside for the venue. I felt as like I had lost everything. My parents, Mia, and any chance for a marriage, all at that same instant. Given what had happened, I knew Jake would not be pleased with me either. When I attempted phoning Mia to have a conversation, she didn't respond to my calls or texts. At the time, Jake was on a business trip, hence, he was not aware that our wedding was under risk, partially because of me, though it wasn't entirely my fault. The stress was intolerable, and I felt bad for damaging Mia's relationship. I at last told Jake everything when he returned from his trip. He was quite helpful and encouraged me that we would work things out together. It relieved me. He helped me see that being honest was the correct thing to do, and I ought to have done it even earlier. Regarding the wedding, Jake and I decided to proceed, even if it meant lowering expenses. We began generating ideas for financial savings. We contacted relatives and friends, outlining the circumstances and requesting assistance. Unbelievably, one of Jake's pals came to save us. He found us a classy but reasonably priced location via one of his contacts. Given the current situation, we simply have to delay the wedding somewhat more, which is quite okay with me. I was attempting to stay in touch with my parents throughout this. Looking back, I'm not sure why I did this. At the time, I was afraid of being let down. I was still living with guilt. They were obstinate, refusing to show up for my wedding if it proceeded as scheduled. The wedding was still under preparation, and despite all the challenges, everything began to fall together. Sadly, many of my family RSVP'd that they would not be going or responded little at all. Without having to be Sherlock, I could guess the news had gone around. One of my aunts told me Mom and Mia had depicted me as a soap opera villain who lied to undermine her sister's happiness and could not accept it. They even changed the story, saying Mia was already engaged and preparing to wed, but I later got engaged to take the front stage. Ignoring me was one thing. Lying about my character took effort. By now, I was exhausted after all that had happened. I couldn't look and feel my best for a wedding. Simultaneously, I struggled to let my parents define me as they had throughout their lifetime. They accused me of being envious and cruel, attributing Mia's life destruction to me. Mia, on the other hand, was in ruins. She hadn't spoken to me since the incident. Hence, even though I knew what I did was appropriate, I felt awful. So, I'm asking you, am I the asshole for not postponing my wedding and informing Mia's fiancé of her cheating? Update. I published a few days ago, and the reaction has been really strong. Unbelievably, my parents began talking to me, but not for the reasons you might guess. They insisted that I apologize to Mia and somehow sort things out with Tom. Should I fail, they even threatened to have me disowned. Through all of this, Jake has been rather encouraging, telling me we did the right thing and we should concentrate on our forthcoming wedding. But at last, Mia got back to me, furious and devastated. She accused me of destroying her life and undermining her happiness out of spite. The talk was challenging. She wasn't open to hearing me try to explain my perspective. She persisted in arguing that regardless of what she had done, I had no right to meddle in her relationship. I lost my cool and asked her who gave her the right to believe she could influence my wedding plans that had been in place long before she was almost engaged. She hung up before I could even bring up the lies Mom and she had been telling about me. When word of the family strife spread like wildfire, Meg, a childhood acquaintance I hadn't heard from in years, called me out of the blue. After moving out for college, I had disconnected from Meg, and our only means of contact was social media, but Mia had kept in touch with her for a bit longer. Their friendship reached into their early 20s. Meg also disclosed another startling story concerning Mia's adultery, one that happened around a year ago. Mia attended Meg's 25th birthday celebration without her then-boyfriend, Tom, who presumably was on a trip. As the evening progressed, and practically everyone was intoxicated, Meg saw Mia growing more flirty with various male visitors, including Meg's boyfriend. Meg first dismissed it as Mia's usual manner. She had always been a natural flirt. Meg knew, though she hadn't seen Mia or her partner for some time. As the celebration drew to an end and guests started to leave, Mia and Meg's boyfriend were caught red-handed together in another room. Given Mia and Tom had been dating 2 to 3 years at the time, this was very embarrassing. The episode split Meg and Mia and destroyed their friendship. When Meg learned about everything, she assumed I should know that Mia did nothing by mistake. She had become accustomed to this conduct and had somehow always gotten away with it. This fresh material really surprised me. Mia's dishonesty, I came to see, was not a one-time error but rather a habit. I asked Meg only one favor. Could she kindly forward this news to Tom herself? I was acting for a cause. When my fiancé, Jake, visited Tom, he was not doing well. Though he didn't say it, I'm sure he was also blaming me for what I had told him. He was second-guessing everything. It would be better still if someone else other than me delivered this terrible news. I also wanted to avoid feeding the story that I was jealous of Mia. Hence, I didn't want to do this myself. As soon as he received word from Meg, Tom wanted to meet personally to go over things. I accepted, expecting some sort of conclusion or at least to clear the air. When we met at a neighborhood coffee shop, Tom clearly was in shock from all that had transpired. Meg's disclosure came to him like yet another wave, yet it was welcome to at last know the truth. Tom related how his split from Mia turned out. Mia was right to believe Tom intended to pop the question to her. Following our talk, he challenged Mia about the cheating, and she finally came clean. Though crushed, he valued my candor. He claimed it was preferable to know the truth now than to learn later, maybe following marriage. Tom said he had thought something was awry in their relationship for some time, but couldn't pin it down until I phoned. We spoke for a lengthy period, during which Tom revealed he intended to set aside time for personal healing and life review. Though it hurt, he appreciated me for having the guts to tell him the truth. This chat brought me closure, knowing I had done the right thing by being truthful with Tom. Still, things with my family have not gotten better. My parents still support Mia. They think I was out of line and must make apologies, focusing just on Mia's pain and neglecting the fact she cheated. They cannot seem to understand why I did what I did. Friends and relatives who learned about the circumstances have also been quite helpful. Many expressed shock at the way my parents behaved and praised me for defending what was right. Though I have a mixed bag of feelings, I am appreciative of the help from people who see my viewpoint. I'm trying to keep concentrated on the good and keep wedding planning underway. Despite the threats from his parents, Jake and I have decided to carry out our plans. We have changed the budget and are working to create the wedding uniquely without their financial support. Though I know the drama is not over, I am resolved to stick to my position. I refuse to allow Mia's behavior or the inclination of my parents to define my existence anymore. I have to give my future with Jake top priority and my happiness. Hey everyone, every moment that passes makes my life seem to get more convoluted. About 4 days following my initial update, events changed dramatically and unexpectedly. Just as I felt the situation could not get worse, it did. I was trying to concentrate at work when Jake called urgently. Panicked, he told me to head straight home, fuming about something horrible. I rushed back. When I got here, Jake seemed obviously upset. He handed me a note that had been slipped under our door. It came from a lawyer standing in for my parents. They were threatening to sue me for emotional suffering and slanderous remarks over the consequences from Mia's failed engagement. I was astounded. My own parents were suing me. The letter explained how my actions had destroyed Mia's reputation and brought her great emotional suffering. It called for a public apology, a retraction of my remarks on Mia's adultery, and a sizable payback in money. To be as nasty as possible, my parents had stretched every limit. My phone buzzed as I went over the letter. Mia was the one calling constantly. At last, looking for some answers, I picked up. Mia's voice carried a mix of desperation and wrath, saying I had destroyed her life, and she had nothing left. She screamed at me. She said she had lost her work since Tom had informed colleagues and mutual acquaintances of hers about her adultery. The word had gone like wildfire, and she was today the target of rumors and criticism. She was deemed problematic, which resulted in her termination. Having my parents send me that legal threat, I felt Mia got what she deserved. She was inconsolable, even though I tried to reason with her, stressing that she had to own her actions. Claiming that I had always wanted to see her fail, she charged me with being envious and bitter. The chat made me feel forlorn and exhausted. The rest of the evening, Jake and I went over our choices. Although we couldn't let my parents pressure us into compliance, we couldn't afford to get caught in a legal fight with them. I believe they knew we were already juggling our wedding budget. This legal fight would simply mark the nail in the coffin. The next day, I contacted a lawyer for help. The circumstances stunned him, but he reassured me our case was strong. He advised us to compile proof of Mia's adultery and how it affected her relationship with Tom, should my parents carry out their threats. He also cautioned us to get ready for a counterclaim. All of this was going on when I got another unplanned call, this one from Tom's mother. Having heard about the circumstances, she wanted to thank me for guiding Tom toward the truth. Tom was devastated, she remarked, but he was glad to learn before committing himself for a lifetime. She also said Tom intended to start again in another city. Her call provided a minor solace among all the turmoil. It let me realize that by being honest, I had done the right thing, even with the instantaneous fallout. Though they may act as outrageously as they wanted, my parents and Mia would remain in the wrong. That weekend, things took yet another drastic turn. Unexpectedly showing up at our residence were my folks, furious. They insisted on talking with me. Though Jake tried to calm them, it soon turned into a shouting contest. While my mother wailed and begged me to mend things with Mia, my father claimed I had destroyed the family. They reiterated their threats to cut me off financially and go on with the lawsuit should I fail to meet their expectations. I stayed put, not cowering into compliance. I told them I would not be sorry for speaking the truth. Mia's actions have consequences. My parents stormed out at the end of the confrontation, resolved to start the case. The next several days were a haze of emotional upheaval and legal discussions. Though Jake and I tried to concentrate on our wedding preparations, the tension was too great. Extended family members who had heard about the circumstances started messaging us. Some offered support, while others attacked my behavior. Although Jake didn't deserve all this drama, I really detested dragging him through it. But I was also appreciative of his unflinching support. And among all this, Meg, the childhood friend who had informed me of Mia's past infidelity, sent me an unexpected note. Her offer to submit a statement regarding what had happened at her party may be very important proof should my parents want to take legal action. Hello, everyone. After several more days, the issue has gotten quite hot. Mia and my dad insisted on getting together personally to go over everything. Jake and I consented, believing this encounter could at last provide some clarity and closure. We agreed to get together in our place so we might manage the surroundings and steer clear of a public display. There was clear tension in the air as my parents and Mia showed up. When they sat down, I could see the expectation in their eyes. Though I had no intention of backing down, they most likely assumed I would be apologizing and begging for forgiveness. I began by tackling the elephant in the room. My parents and Mia looked perplexed, obviously not expecting this. I informed them, I understand why everyone is here today, but before we go any further, I want to make one thing clear. I'm here to lay out the facts. I inhaled deeply and started making my point. I began with a couple of months ago. I questioned Mia if it wasn't true that she handed me her phone during our double-date dinner and that I found she was chatting to Mike, her ex-boyfriend, when she was in a very committed relationship with Tom. She said she made a one-time error, but we both knew it wasn't accurate. Mia moved uneasily in her seat. Her face paled. I carried on, opening a folder loaded with proof. I told her I had talked with Meg, who threw the party a year ago. Meg confirmed that Mia had been found cheating with her boyfriend. This was a behavior trend, not a one-time error. I turned over a written statement Meg sent. Mia's parents and I looked at it, their expressions changing from uncertainty to shock. Still, that was only one thing. I also brought out more proof. Text exchanges between Mia and Meg in which Mia admitted to cheating and pleaded with Meg not to tell Tom. These time-stamped signals were unambiguous and devoid of uncertainty. I arranged the printed messages on the table. My mother gasped, and my father's face became red with rage, though this time it appeared more toward Mia than it did me. At last, I turned to Tom's words, presented in a letter he wrote. He spoke about how he approached Mia following our talk, and how she finally admitted her infidelity. He also detailed the emotional toll her adultery took on him and how it affected his choice not to pop the question. My parents found no words, unable to dispute the overwhelming proof. They fixated on the paperwork before them. Tears welled in Mia's eyes, but she said nothing, clearly understanding the seriousness of the matter. I then addressed the lawsuit. Although my parents had threatened to sue me for emotional suffering and slander based on the facts, it was abundantly evident that what I had said was accurate. They lacked legal justification for their posture. Actually, if they went after this, I had a strong case for a counterclaim. The space was quiet. Clearly surprised and adjusting to the reality of the circumstances were my parents and Mia. Knowing that I had at last advocated for myself, I felt relief. For the last time, I told Mia I did this because it was the proper thing to do, not out of spite or jealousy. Mia had consequences for her actions. It was time for her to own them. Regarding my wedding, my message was straightforward. Either with or without their approval, everything was going forward as scheduled. Jake and I would be getting married. We wouldn't allow someone to destroy our happiness. Rising to indicate that the session was over, I hoped this would be a turning point for all of us. That brought me closure, and I left the room. Though I am aware that difficulties lie ahead, I feel, for the first time in a long time, in charge of my own life. Although my parents and Mia can proceed with their case, now they know I will be squarely facing them, and there is no good outcome for either of us. The encouragement of our friends and relatives keeps Jake and I forging ahead with our new life. Though the road to recovery with my sister and family will be long and challenging, we are ready to travel it together eventually. Defending myself and acting morally offered a sense of tranquility I had been lacking for so long. Looking ahead, Jake and I know we are stronger since we confronted these obstacles squarely. Without the recommendations and encouragement in the comments, this would not have been feasible. All of you and your tales have taught me so much. Thank you, then farewell. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.